Welcome everyone to San Diego Comic-Con at home. And we are especially excited to have you all attend our panel, The Women Behind Mythic Quest, Raven's Banquet, collaboration across gaming and television to create a successful crossover. Representation is just as important off camera as it is on screen, and the industry is making positive changes, but there's still ways to go. A collaboration like the one with Mythic Quest, Raven's Banquet, is a great example of how combining different areas of expertise and representation of women within these industries can make an amazing project. Joining us today to speak on the series and their experiences, we have Megan Ganz, co-creator and executive producer of Mythic Quest, Raven's Banquet, Danielle Kreinik, director of TV development, Ubisoft Film and Television, and executive producer of the series as well, Ashley Birch, writer and actor for Mythic Quest, Raven's Banquet, and we also have Elizabeth Laverso, VP Product Development at Ubisoft Red Storm. Thank you all for joining today.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
No problem. So I had a chance recently to watch the series. And by the way, it is amazing. It is funny. And it's so cool just to see all of your guys' contributions to this program. Now, Ashley, I have a question for you. You know, I myself has been a longtime gamer. You've been a longtime gamer yourself. Can you speak to what it was like writing for Mythic Quest, Raven's Banquet with that background in mind?
It was incredibly surreal. I don't know about you, but I didn't think when I was a kid that there would ever be a TV show about video games that wasn't like a cartoon, and especially made by the creative team that's behind it and featuring an Oscar winner. It's a really surreal experience when you've loved games for so long, because the industry has been relatively niche for a very long time. It was sort of seen as like a cottage thing that, you know, just only nerdy people liked or whatever. And so now the fact that it's becoming much more mainstream and much more widespread is really, really cool. And I am still sort of astonished that I'm a part of this project, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, growing up, I never thought that I could even make it a career within gaming, because that was just something that I wasn't able to see. And now having this series, there's so many different representation, and for women and young girls who can watch it, they can see that they can have a career within this space. But also it's a great opportunity for those who didn't grow up being gamers to learn more and to kind of experience some aspects of the gaming world. Now, Megan, you approached this project without a background in gaming. Can you talk about your experience learning about the gaming community and also women in games in particular?
Yeah, well, there was two different communities I was learning about, basically, which are the gamers that play the game, but also the dev teams, which I didn't have experience. I mean, I have a little bit of gaming experience from when I was younger, but certainly wasn't involved lately with the meteoric rise of these phenomenal games that are like playing movies. And so it was great. I mean, from the dev team side of things, it was fun because there were a lot of crossovers with entertainment and the writer's room and how we develop stories and TV shows and things like that. But there were also very specific differences. Like in a writer's room, everyone that's there is writers, whereas and something that's so fun about the show is that there's different people with different points of view. A monetization expert, we've got a designer, we would have artists, like, and all of these people are in the same room and they have very different ideas of what needs to happen, and so that brought lots of fun conflict and comedy. So it's just been a delight. You know, sometimes I think with the gaming community, for women especially, some of the worst stories rise to the top. And so that was what I was aware of before, but coming into it, I had no idea the like strong presence of women, and not only the cool things that they're making for games, but just like how much the female fandom is there and present and evolving.
And speaking of the women who are behind the scenes and who've been making games, Liz, you have been involved in the gaming industry. Talk to me about the game that was developed within the show. Can you talk about how it differed from your typical game development work?
Well, sure. So we created Mythic Quest, the game, for the TV show. And typically, as Ubisoft Red Storm, we make more realistic shooters. So it was a big departure, not only content-wise, but also creating a game that really fits in with the TV show script. So a lot of the things that we've done for the game, we would never ship in a real game. For example, making the characters in the fight scene that strip their clothes off. When we model characters, we don't normally model what's beneath, but specifically for Mythic Quest, we had to model all of the parts, and we also had to animate some things that we wouldn't normally animate. So that was quite unique.
Welcome.
Yeah, I know. Thank you for the HR violations. It was fantastic. But so, it's very different. The game for the show needed to work so that, like, when you see Ashley's character playing, and they're actually playing an executable, so a lot of what you see is it plays and it looks extremely realistic, but it doesn't have to function like a normal game would. I mean, those normally take us, they're years in the making and lots of extra functionality and things like that we were able to just do, smaller pieces for them to bring Mythic Quest to life for the show.
And the great thing is, like with this show, you're implementing real life game dev, but then also you're implementing the entertainment side of things, which the video game industry and entertainment have had such a tight relationship, even early as, the 90s and the 80s. So Danielle, spanning TV and games, what was it like bringing these worlds that have always had a relationship, but bringing them closer together and bringing everyone together for this?
Well, I have to say I was really lucky to have two amazing teams to work with and bring together with our writers' room led by, Megan and Rob and David. And then I have Red Storm with Liz and David. It's unbelievable. So it makes my job so much easier. So the whole thing of once we got the stuff from Red Storm, taking it to the writer's room, being like, does this work for you? The communication was super easy and the ideas were just flowing. And it was exciting because it was a fast turnaround every single time and always excellent. And just the stuff that we got from the writer's room, like the awesome tooth on Roscoe, which is my favorite thing ever, and implementing that with the Red Storm team, it was magic. It was magic to have these two great groups working together.
And adding on to the magic too, we have to discuss the quarantine episode, which was hilarious and relatable. And there's so many hilarious and relatable moments throughout the entire show. But this is a question for Megan and Ashley. What was it like producing it, acting it, and the episode while in quarantine yourself and having to get it together in such a short notice?
It was nuts. I don't know what you felt, Ash. She was like, we had told all the actresses, basically, all the actors, like, power down. We shut down production. I mean, we were 1 week into shooting season 2, and then we just stopped, and everybody went home. And I think it was about 3 weeks. And then we started talking about it, Rob and David and I, as a possibility, just because, honestly, Ubisoft had been talking to us about how they had transferred over into remote working and how obviously most industries were doing that. And we were kind of realizing, like, there's so much workplace comedy to be mined here from, like, this transition and what it's doing to people, but also obviously very relevant. But we knew the only way it would be relevant is if we got it out while we were still in quarantine. So but as soon as we decided to do it, we contacted the actors, and I think it was like the same day that we were like, so can you be in front of a camera today to test? We're going to shoot like this test, because we then sent it to Apple to get approval, proving to them that we could make this episode and make it look, make the quality on a level where we wouldn't have to apologize for it and say, oh, well, we had to do things remotely. So, but it really looks like a high quality episode of the television show. So thankfully everybody kind of rallied around and just like pulled themselves out of whatever they were in for those 3 weeks and got together. And it was truly incredible. One of the hardest productions I've ever done, but it was also one of the most rewarding.
That's sort of the amazing thing about our particular group of people, our cast and crew, is that for sure, you going from doing absolutely nothing all day and wondering how you're going to fill the days to suddenly having to go into production mode can be like a little bit of a shift. But the amazing thing about everyone that works on the show is that everyone was game. I mean, as soon as we found out it was happening, the gals of myself, Charlotte, Nick Dowd, Jesse Ennis, and Imani Hakim have become like a little gal group. So we text each other all the time. And everyone was elated. Like, no one was like, oh my God, how am I going to do my own makeup? How am I going to light myself? Everyone was just excited. And for me, I come from sketch comedy and just putting stuff that looks terrible and is barely functional on YouTube. So it kind of almost felt like a throwback to that, which was sort of fun.
I said it felt like college. It felt like
it
college.
felt like you were making an extremely expensive and very well produced like project with your friends in college all of a sudden, which was pretty cool. And it was also fun to see.
Really people like, do you have any more books to put your camera up on? Can you go grab some books? Can you pull a chair out of the other room and like use it? Can you put up like furniture pads? So, it was a very ramshackle kind of thing.
And it was funny too, because they sent us all the stuff that you eat. So they sent like me and Imani controllers and potato chip bags and that kind of stuff. But because I'd cut my hair off between seasons, they had fitted me for like a full wig, like a Rachel wig. So I got this box with just hair in it, and I was prepared to like put it on and like figure it out. And then like 20 minutes before we were supposed to shoot, Rob was like, have you put your wig on yet? And I was like, and it was like on my head. And I was like, no, what do you need? And he is like, what does your hair look like right now? And I showed him, and he was like, we're just going to do that. And it was like a fun thing to just sort of do things on the fly like that. And that was such a more authentic, I think, and more authentic to people's experience, that my hair wouldn't look coiffed and colored. It would look like this, which is like crazy, like a hobbit. And so it was a testament to everyone from the top down, that everyone was so game and just willing to do whatever they needed to do to make the best product in really weird circumstances.
Yeah, I mean, I completely understand. Like, doing any kind of broadcast remotely during quarantine is tough as it is. So if you guys do an actual episode, like, major kudos to you. And also another thing I need to note too in this conversation is it is such a breath of fresh air to be speaking with an all-women's panel right now, especially when it deals with Hollywood and gaming, because that is actually quite rare. And these are rare moments that I'm hoping that with the representation that you guys are displaying within Mythic Quest, that's going to be something that can continue to move forward within both industries and collectively. So I want to ask you guys, in Hollywood and in gaming, we all know historically it's been very male-dominated industries. Can you speak to your own personal experiences as women in these respective industries? Ashley, we can start with you.
Sure. So I've spent a lot of time in the games industry, primarily as a voice actor. And I will say that in the time that I've been doing that work, I've seen representation of women in particular. It's improved exponentially, I would say. I mean, when I was playing games, your options were like Princess Peach, or a character that seemed to have agency, but really their only purpose in the narrative was to be damseled or to be sexualized in some way. And now there are full franchises, massive multi-million-dollar franchises that are being helmed by women. A game that I'm in, Horizon Zero Dawn, your only protagonist is a woman, and you don't have an option to choose between different genders or build your own character. That's just the protagonist that you have. And she's not sexualized at all. And she's a really complex character. So I think representation has dramatically improved. And I want to sort of acknowledge that as like a sign that things have changed and are continuing to change. But I still think that behind the scenes, we are seeing a lack of representation of women, particularly in roles that would require STEM background. And I think that's sort of a systemic issue, because I don't think, even now, I think there's increased attention toward increasing the amount of women that are in STEM, but even still, I think girls are not encouraged to follow pathways like programming or coding. Mm-hmm. And there's also a sort of element of you can't be what you can't see. So it's not like we hear a lot of stories. I mean, that's, I think, part of the reason that our show is kind of special, is because you're seeing women in all different sorts of professions within the company, not just, the woman in HR. Poppy is the lead programmer, and she's a woman. So I think our show, I'm really proud of the diversity in it, and I also think it is not necessarily representative of what's happening in a lot of games companies. There is a lack of women in those roles. I have a friend who's a coder who I think she is the only coder on her entire team, and her team is pretty big. So as encouraged as I am to see how much representation has changed within the games themselves, I do feel like we have a long way to go in terms of getting that representation on the other side, on the dev side.
Liz, could you expand on that?
Sure. So I've spent over 20 years in the games industry, and what I've been able to see happen is an evolution, not only in the characters like Ashley's talking about. I mean, you look at some of the earlier, like characters, for example, and they were extremely sexualized. Well, now a lot of the female characters in games, like the one that Ashley's the voiceover for, are, they're much stronger and more realistic female characters. And I think what that has done is it not only has expanded the gamers' roles themselves, a lot more females are playing now. I think that we're seeing, I would say over half of gamers nowadays are women. As well as I think that it's helping females realize that there are, they could go into games. The industry has a bad reputation coming from somewhat of a like frat party, type of environment with all males. So I think that some females have not considered going into gaming because they didn't see it as like, first of all, interesting place because they didn't play the games, but second of all, as like a safe area to go into, as well as, being encouraged to go into more of the sciences and the programming. You do get a lot of artists who you're now bringing into the industry, but it's been somewhat of a hard transition. Also, I think that, overall, we've had to improve our hiring practices so that we are encouraging women to apply for the jobs, as well as getting girls to participate early in things like some of the projects that we support, Girls Make Games, or Girls Who Code and things like that, which is hoping to change the industry as a whole moving forward so that we have a larger group of women in jobs like programming, the writing, design, as well as in testers roles, so that other females and girls coming up see that this is a very viable option for a career path.
Danielle and Megan, what have been your guys' experience when it came to entertainment and in Hollywood, and where do you see this industry evolving as it moves forward when it comes to representation of women?
Megan, do you want to go first?
Sure. I've been working in television for just a little bit over 10 years now. And when I came in, it was very much like, okay, we've been told we have to have women in the writer's room. So it wasn't that there was a barrier to entry. Like, I sort of feel like when I got in, it was like almost a gold star next to my name because they knew they had to get a woman. So if they found one they liked, it wasn't a knock against me. That being said, all my problems began once I got there because I realized that there just wasn't the structure in place at the time to have female mentors in positions above you. I encountered a lot of women who, if there were women that were above me, they had gone through such a difficult time to get there that they had been basically internalized the idea that women share the same space in the writer's room, and so that we are in competition. And that is backed up by things like I remember writer's rooms being split apart and all of the men being called out by name to go into their respective room, and then basically being said like, and one woman in each room. And what that does is it subtly tells you that you are offering the same thing as any other woman is, and that is just the voice of the woman. It's a way to like silo us into not a writer, you're a woman writer, and that's a different thing. Now, I think what we need to do, because now it's a different situation and we have a lot more women in the room, and now I think we need to remember those things that we went through, realize that women are not diversity, we're half of the population, so bringing women to the writer's room is not a step towards diversity, really. And what we need to do now that we're in the positions of power is to make sure that we're bringing in diverse voices and not expecting everyone to be a representation of their ethnicity or their age or their gender, but judge them individually and make sure that we are figuring out who the person is and not just checking a box. So I think that's what we need to do now that we're in a position of power. And so that's what I'm hopeful for the industry moving forward.
I agree with exactly what Megan said. When I came over to Ubisoft, I was finding we had these huge action titles, and when we get the lists from the agencies like, hey, we want to go out, we want to put this together, it's all men and one token woman. That's unacceptable. So my colleague Margaret Boykin and I decided to create a fellowship to make sure that women are being able to be raised up from like as they are starting their their careers and making sure that, yes, women like to write action. Women like to write everything. We are people. I love horror movies. That's my favorite thing. Like, there's nothing we can't do. It's the same. So we just want to make sure, as Megan was saying, like, now that we have the power, making sure to spread that power around and make sure that we're growing this next crop of writers that come from diverse backgrounds, are able to tell new stories that we've never seen before. I'm tired of seeing the same thing over and over again. Let's tell new stories from different viewpoints. And we're able to do that now. But it's been a hard road, because when I started a little over a decade ago as well, it was, nobody wants to see that story. Nobody cares. It's like, well, I want to see that story. I'm looking for that story. So why can't I tell that? If I want it, there are going to be multiple people who want that story. So it's exciting now to see the growth, but we have a long way to go.
We definitely have a long way to go. I mean, it's unfortunate that some, the industries have progressed, but there's still the repetition of certain behaviors and cycles that we need to stop, and they're still continuing on. Now, in order for us to continue to address these things, what do you guys think, as for Hollywood and for gaming, these two industries, how can we encourage more women to become part of it, to thrive within these industries? And then more importantly, how can we create more comfortable entryways for women to enter into this space? Because it can be intimidating, and especially when you have issues of toxicity and sexism and racism. So what can we do to encourage that we could bring more women in and just make it better, a better pathway for them to come in?
I mean, there need to be people like us in power who want to open the door. That's the biggest thing, is like, our writing room for Mythic Quest is incredible. I've never seen a room like that. It's diverse. Every voice is heard. Everybody's on equal footing. Nobody takes, like, I've been blown away by the work that they do, because truthfully, nobody's like, well, this is mine, you can't have it. It's like, how do we share this amongst each other, which you don't have very often. So making more rooms like that, which is hard work, but obviously Megan and our executive producing team can do that, so it can be done. So we need more of those types of people in charge, making sure that the doorway is open and allowing those people to come in.
Ashley?
I totally agree with Danielle. I think it's a top-down and bottom-up issue. So I think for the folks that are in a privileged position like we are, to be able to open those doors, that needs to be something that we prioritize. And then also, in terms of bottom-up, I think education, and in particular when it comes to the gaming industry, like I said earlier, I just feel like women and girls are still not really encouraged to pursue STEM. It's not something that is seen as a field that is open to women, even though so many women were critical and like iconic in the STEM industry, or in the STEM field. So I think part of that is having encouragement on an educational level, an early education, to show girls that there are more pathways to them in those sorts of fields: engineering, programming, science, etc. And also having mentors within those fields, because I know from my friend who was a coder, the path was hard the whole way through, because in every college class, she was the only female in the room, in every job, she was the only female in the room. So I think that's another difficulty, is that when you're the only person on that path, it can feel lonely and hard, and maybe not like it's not worth walking. But so I think encouraging that on an educational level, having people up top that are looking for that and prioritizing that. And I think also, I mean, it's hard because as a woman in a particular field, sometimes you don't want to be trotted around as like the woman programmer. But I do think that visibility in those positions is important, so that people can see someone. I have a friend who's a female DP, and she said that a lot, that when she met another female DP, it sort of jogged her, and she was like, oh, I can do this. This is an option for me. So I think it just doesn't occur to a lot of people that there are options that are not sort of the well-trodden paths. And if you see people in those positions, it makes it seem all the more plausible that you could then do that. So it's one of those things where I think it's an issue that needs to be attacked from multiple angles. Yeah. But it does seem like we're heading in a good direction with it.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely seems that way. Liz, what are your thoughts?
Well, so I think one of the main things that we need to continue to do is not only encourage, younger females to get into the engineering and the sciences and everything. I think we also have to look at presenting the industry itself as a viable option. I think Mythic Quest actually goes a long way because you have some awesome characters in there that are not just your typical, roles. You've got Poppy, who is, an engineer, and she's feisty, and I think that they can connect with her. I think we also have to have characters in our games. We have to write our games and produce games that females are interested in playing, but that also empower them because, like in our game, The Division, the female characters are badasses in there. I mean, you want to play them, and that's the type of thing I think that young women need to be attracted to, the entertainment that we make. And that we also have to put forward a very positive role model in ourselves, as well as in the characters in our TV show, in our movies, and in our games. That's what will draw them in and make them realize this industry is viable. Women are very much valued and have diverse roles across, you can do the arts, you can do the sciences, you can write HR, accounting, any of it. It's all available. I think a lot of them shy away from it because they just don't, first of all, I don't think they realize that it is a career path. But second of all, I think, they've seen what's gone on at some of the game companies that have had some issues, not only internally, but also, there's so much negativity online, especially in some of the forums and Reddit and all of that. And we have to be really careful to keep things positive and moving forward and encouraging so that the next generation, not only treats each other better, but also, wants to be involved in this.
Megan?
Yeah, I mean, to echo what Liz said, I mean, obviously I've always been a big proponent of the power of storytelling. I think that the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves, as Ashley said, like, unless you can see it, you cannot be it. And so it was very important to us to represent women on the show, but realistically, I would say a lot of the women, a good handful, Ashley's character, for instance, they're occupying lower level positions at the studio because right now I think that's reflective of the industry, that people are coming in, but there's a lot at the lower level. There's maybe a glut of women at that level, and women like Poppy are exceptional. And that's why as a show, we treat her as the exception to the rule, but we don't make her this perfect character. She's got an ego. She's kind of a monster, just like Ian is. We didn't want her to be that person who's just always walking in telling him not to have fun and all of those things. And I think like there's a potential that some of the stories that we have classically been telling women are so skewed towards romance that we perceive ourselves as not being complete unless we are attached to another person. And I think that filters down into our mentality about what we deserve and what we are put on this earth to do. So for instance, like, it was a big wake-up call for me when I started working with Rob, not only because the Sunny Room was my first experience just feeling like a writer and not being asked about my experience as a woman and just being asked to do my job, and that was it. But also on top of that, he has very frequently said to me when I've come up to a new challenge, like being a co-creator of a show, which I had never done before this season. And I would say, oh, well, I just want to make sure that I'm like ready, that I deserve it. And he was like, stop that. Like, you earned it. Like, you're here. Stop acting like you have to ask for you have to earn something to be given to you. Like, you show up and take what you want. And I think that's just unfortunately been bred into men a little bit more than it has into women. So that's what I've been trying to pass down to women that I mentor, is that when they say to me, oh, I can't write, or I don't, I'm like, enough of that. You wrote me a text, you know how to write. Let's just get past this idea that you don't know what you're doing, because men don't give that hurdle to themselves. And so we're starting, like, the job is already hard enough. Just, you have to get in the door first. And then believe me, you'll have plenty of challenges that you're not going to throw at yourself. So don't start yourself off on a bad foot.
It's true. The imposter syndrome feels so real when you are in a position of power, especially in Hollywood, because there are all these men around you who just don't care. You're like, I do deserve to be here, and you have to repeat it to yourself a lot, but it's silly. Like, we obviously deserve to be here. Let's take it and then show everybody else that they deserve to be here as well. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. There's
But,
also
I think we see that in the applicants that we get. I think women go down a job description and think, I have to check all the boxes. And I can tell you, most of the men who apply for the job, half the time they don't check any of the boxes. And it's like, so I think women really feel like they have to be like the ideal candidate, and we have to get that out of people's head. You don't. There has to be something on there that, says, we need to interview this person. And you're right. It's, like Megan said, you wrote me a text, obviously you can write, so jump in there and take a chance. And oftentimes I think females, they don't take the chances unless they feel like they're 100% a fit.
Ashley, is there anything you want to add on to that?
I mean, all of that was completely right, I think. I mean, yeah, I relate a lot to that feeling of like needing to check all the boxes. That's a really hard, and I honestly think working on Mythic Quest and working under Megan, and also seeing how Rob is such a bulldozer in like the best way. Like he just doesn't, he just has the confidence to go in and demand what he knows that he deserves. And it's interesting watching that because it's just it's not a gear that I have. And I think it's one that I'm realizing I need to develop. And that's something that, yeah, I know for a lot of women in my life, we have that same sort of thing of like feeling like we need permission. And it is a crutch because the more that I talk to men, they go into spaces, they feel like they belong and they ask for what they need. And we've been sort of conditioned to not think that that's the case for us. And it's not true.
I mean, to give us credit, like it was the case that you did have to be the perfect candidate not so long ago, because for instance, for me, when I entered the entertainment system, it was like, if you didn't knock it out of the park as a staff writer, like you were gone, because they would just hire in a different woman staff writer. There's a dozen of them. So you really did have to be all of those things. Mm-hmm. And, but now that we are in the positions of power, we have mentors where hopefully the new writers are coming in and they have these mentors and people in the tech industry to look up to. They finally have the chance to learn before they get judged, which I think is like something that is not always given to us. And now we have that opportunity to come in not knowing everything and have the chance to find our feet.
Yeah, and I think that even when we get into the system and get into the industries, there's still so much that we have to learn. I know for myself, I've had to learn how to navigate where it's like, okay, you can't show too much emotions or else they say you're emotional. And there's these double standards that even when we're in the industry, us as women have to deal with. So I want to go and ask each one of you, what's one quick advice that you would give to the next generation of women in entertainment and gaming who, let's just say, either who are interested in stepping in or who are already in, and it's like, okay, what should I do next? Megan, we can start with you.
Ooh, okay. I mean, that one that I said before would be a big one of just trust your talent. Don't think that you haven't figured out how to do it yet. Like there's something driving you. And I think that that's the most important thing to listen to. My major advice though, to all writers in general is become obsessed with the thing that you love. Like figure out what it is that makes you laugh, that makes you think, that drives you. And then absolutely pour all of your interest into that thing and really chase it. Like that's how I found every job because, and including where I'm at, because I just really soaked up everything and I was ready to go once those people called me.
Danielle, what would be your quick advice?
I agree with Megan, but also I would say don't be afraid to reach out to people. There are so many of us who are happy to be mentors, happy to talk to you. Don't be afraid because you have nothing to lose. I try to make it a point to answer everybody who reaches out to me and do coffee, even if it's short, just because it's important. If you don't see it, it's not there. So it's important for me to talk about what my career has been so I can help lead other people in their careers and make sure that the doors are open.
Liz?
So I think one of the things that echoes through all of this is don't sell yourself short. First and foremost, if you see something, you should ask for it. Don't wait for somebody to give you something, because nowadays you're just going to get left in the dust. I mean, out of sight, out of mind. Also, I think that, like Megan said, if you really like playing games, if you enjoy working with technology and computers, or you enjoy writing stories, any of that, then follow the passion and figure out how to get where you want to be. Look for these extra programs, reach out to people like Danielle. Don't be afraid to go to Comic-Con or, any of that type of stuff, and talk to people and ask questions, ask them about the industry, and apply for the jobs. I mean, 9 times out of 10, we just don't have the applicants applying. So even if you have just a few of the qualifications, you may have an opportunity if you're the one that sends in your resume.
Ashley?
I echo everything that everyone else has said, and sort of piggybacking a bit onto what Danielle said as well. I think it's also important to remember that it's okay to ask for help, because I think there's also a feeling of like, I'm on my own. I can't, I have to show that I'm extra strong, that I don't need support, that I don't whatever to be able to, blaze this trail. And no one gets anywhere alone. And I've actually found that I've worked in different contexts where I've worried about asking too many questions or needing more guidance than other people or whatever. And the feedback that I've always gotten is, I'm impressed that you ask questions when you don't know the answer. I'm impressed that you reach out for help when you realize that something is outside of your purview or that you want to learn. So I've never gotten the feedback of, you should know this already. I think it's important to seek out mentors, to know that you have support, and to also be very selective about where you get that support from. Obviously, there will be situations like in the gaming industry where you might be surrounded by men, and that might be really difficult. So maybe there's no one in your immediate area that is going to be a support to you, but there are women in the industry at large. So they don't have to be in your immediate vicinity to be a support to you. There are ways that you can access people that are going through a similar situation or have gone through a similar situation and get that support that you need, even if you don't immediately see it around you. And then hopefully over time, that won't be the case anymore. And you won't have to search high and low for another female programmer. They'll just be your partner sitting next to you. But until then, I think reaching out, finding those resources, and knowing that you have support is really, really important, because no one does anything alone.
And the great thing of seeing this crossover with Hollywood and entertainment and gaming more is that it's going to be integrating more women into the scene. Now, Danielle, this is a question for you specifically. How does the gaming and television crossover reach a wider audience? And also, how do you see this crossover creating more opportunities, especially for women in the space?
There are lots of different ways that it can cross over. What's most exciting is on the television side, it's a new doorway for people to discover new games and new worlds. I love being able to spend more time with the characters that I love. So for us, being able to create a show either based about the industry, which is really exciting because it's like, oh, there are all these opportunities there. I didn't know about that. So there are lots of opportunities that we have, especially within our catalog. But hopefully more people will start doing that, because it is a new world and it's an exciting world, and it creates new opportunities for all types of people.
Yes, it is a new and exciting world. But also, what's exciting too? What? Season 2. So, Megan, my question for you is, what can we, the viewers, expect from season 2?
Well, we started, as I said, we started shooting one episode of it, and then we shut down. And so we are doing some rewriting, because there's things like in the first episode, somebody says to somebody else, so what have you been doing for the last 6 months? And it's like, well, that doesn't apply anymore, because everyone's been doing the same thing. So you would know. So we've had to make a lot of changes. But I would say in general, the really exciting thing about season 2, and this applies to most shows, so it's not really giving anything away, is that we've now established our characters, the basics, the foundations of them. And we spent the first season focusing on Poppy and Ian, because they're the central dynamic, the central relationship of the show. And now what's fun is that we're moving into a second season where we get to explore the ensemble more as a whole. We get to mix up the characters a little more, have fun duos that you haven't seen before, interesting pairings and dynamics. And we've got a lot of fun stuff planned. More fun, because last season we did a couple out there episodes and people responded so well to them that we're like, like, great, we're the Out There show now. So we have so much. I cannot wait to start shooting again. I'm really excited. If you loved what we did in quarantine in 3 weeks, imagine what we can do in 3.5 months.
I mean, listen, anything is possible, and it's tremendous what you guys are doing as a team. And like we discussed throughout this entire panel, representation is so important for not only for the growth of this show, but also for the growth of Hollywood and gaming as well. Mythic Quest is a true testament and is an amazing example of how diverse representation can develop amazing projects and especially moments in history. So guys, I just want to quickly just thank you all for joining today. And it was such amazing insight that I even learned and advice that you guys gave that I'm even going to be taking with me back to my work as well. And thank you all for tuning into our panel, the woman behind Mythic Quest, Raven's Banquet, as well as San Diego Comic-Con at home. Everyone, my name is Erin Ashley Simon, and I hope you all have a wonderful day today, tomorrow, and the next day. See you, everyone.
Thanks, Erin.